Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another Scholar Session. We will have probably two more after this one, in fact, and then we'll be done with Scholar Sessions and maybe done with offered CAP credit events. So if you are needing CAP credits, you do want to gobble these up. The two Scholar Sessions that are required for you to have one CAP credit are now narrowing down to these last three Scholar Sessions. So if you're looking to, again, accrue CAP credits, you need two of these Scholar Sessions to do so. Today's CAP credit, today's Scholar Session isn't going to count as one half credit. If you go to another one, the next one is going to be tomorrow. There's another Scholar Session. Oh, it is in this classroom, and I am the one presenting that one. So I'll be presenting another Scholar Session tomorrow. Just to kind of give you a teaser on that one. The last two are musically inclined, musically centric. I will be performing about 5 or 6 of my songs and then breaking down the lyric of each one of them. And next week, Isaiah Garnett, a senior and employee here at Emmanuel College as well, also a musician, will be breaking down his music the same way. And so last two are music focused. Now I'm not sure if Chris is going to break out into song. We're hoping he doesn't. But if he does by chance, then we will have 3 music-centered ones here at the end. If not, today's is Chris Maxwell's. And so I want to introduce you to Chris's topic. Chris will be talking about partly his book, but also the process that goes into writing a book that he has written and getting it published and so forth. So the title of his session, which is session 6 today, From Thoughts in Mind to Book in Hand, a Publishing Adventure. And so we want to welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Maxwell to our Scholar Sessions today. Chris, it's all yours.
Thank you. I was thinking just a few days ago as I was getting ready to board a plane, I was going through the terminal and I saw the sign that said uneven surfaces. And it reminded me, and of course I took a picture of it, and it reminded me of a poem that I wrote several years ago as when I was able to fly back before the COVID. So it was definitely nice to get back on a plane again last weekend. But uneven surfaces just really hit me when I saw that sign. And as I was on the flight a few years ago, I wrote a poem about that's how life is. It's just like we're living in this world of uneven surfaces, and I had no idea how much more uneven the surfaces of life was about to become. And that poem was published in one of my books, and then it became something deeper than that for me. It wasn't just a poem, it was a reminder that's how life is, so how do we respond to that? And it was just kind of a personal conviction from God, a reminder that even in the uneven surfaces, amid the chaos, the uncertainty, the what are we going to do now, what do we do next world that we're living in, that we need some stability. We need balance. And so balance became my personal word over the chaos of COVID and those uneven surfaces of life. Balance was the word. And so I began journaling about it, and I'll tell you more of that story in a moment. But that came back to me as I thought about, oh yeah, I need to find balance even as I'm boarding the next plane, meaning conversation, the next plane, meaning mood, decisions we make, tasks we seek to complete. We need to find balance amid the chaos, the fear, and the confusion. So let's just dive in and think about this. My latest book is Equilibrium, 31 Ways to Stay Balanced on Life's Uneven Surfaces. And we'll talk about that. And the first part of writing a book is, what do you think starts with a D? Dream. Let's just dream about it. But the dream about writing this book really didn't just start when I had that conviction or that word, that mood of balance, or seeing a sign of uneven surfaces. It goes way back to my childhood when I first started learning and loving to read and learning and loving to write. I began writing when I was young, and then as I continued growing up, I just kept writing. And I had a high school English teacher that was an encouragement to me. She loved my writing, and she just spoke words of encouragement. She said, "You need to keep doing this." And I keep thinking back, what if she had not said that? What if she had not done that? And so that's part of the dream that goes long before, because whatever you're working on right now, whatever you're wanting to write, it's not going to start when you think it starts. It has already started. It's a part of your story. It's a part of your history. And so Equilibrium started when I was very young, me not knowing that I would ever be writing a book or that I would be writing so much as I have written. I just needed to write, and I needed people who would believe in me and encourage me to do that. Well, I was writing in the high school newspaper. I wrote music reviews, book reviews, and as a student at Emmanuel College, we had a newspaper, and I was writing, again, book reviews, music reviews, and I had a column that I was writing about. And there were two people at Emmanuel College that helped me believe in dreams that I had. And one was an English professor here at Emmanuel, Joyce Taylor. She lived in the house right across from Student Development, the Life Point office now. That's where she lived. And she wanted to read not just the assignments that I wrote in class, but she wanted to read my poems and my journal entries and my stories. And you guys, some of you students may not know that this time in history ever existed, but this was before computers and internet, and we wrote very differently back then than we write now. But Joyce Taylor was a professor, an English professor at Emmanuel, that encouraged me to dream about writing. Isn't it interesting now? She's passed away, but this book would not have been written without her. That's part of her dream. Her having dreams about me helped me to dream. And also, Doug Beecham, the General Superintendent of the International Pentecostal Holiness Denomination, he was one of the professors here. He was a mentor and a pastor to me personally, and he dared me to write because he believed in what he read and what he saw as I was dreaming. So that dreaming part just continued going on through the years. It's not just this book, it's the dreaming and writing book and music reviews for a variety of magazines over the years, writing Sunday school curriculum for many years, and then writing devotions for the Assemblies of God denomination. And again, all through this, Joyce Taylor, Debbie and I were living in Orlando at that time. Joyce Taylor was still living here. She would send me letters. She would be reading our church newsletter, the articles that I would write for that, and she would send me letters. This is so good. Again, not email. This was letters that were sent in the mail many years ago. And then Dr. Beecham would still give me encouraging words and ideas. And then many other people would give me opportunities to write book reviews, music reviews, Sunday school curriculum. And then those moved toward articles. And then I began writing books. And so Equilibrium is my 11th book. And the dream about Equilibrium, again, started when all of these other dreams were taking place. So now let's go back to the specific dream about how did this become something about my personal story related to balance. I believe that the tension that we all have been feeling the last few years with COVID and the uncertainty, but also this is what I talk to students about. Those of you who know me in my class, or you come and meet with me in the office and we talk, I'm trying to help you find balance in so many ways. Time management, balance in how to deal with your emotions better, how to have this, what I would consider a balanced spiritual life. So it's not just, well, I feel God, so I must be close to God. No, it's understanding the bigger biblical issues and finding that equilibrium. So again, the balance was my personal theme, and I started writing more about it. I put a book proposal together, and from the dream side to the writing side became a lot of another W that could be here, and that's work. It became a lot of hard work. So I'm dreaming about this, and I'm personally writing about it for myself, and then turning it into something that would eventually be a book proposal. And my friend Steve Spillman, who is the owner of True Potential Publishing, he's published my last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the 8th book of my 11 books. This is the 8th one that he's published. And just my conversations with him, because he would always ask me, okay, Chris, where's your heart? What do you want to write about next? And those were part of our dialogues. And my dream was that I began talking to Steve about, and that I began writing about. So I put some sample chapters together, let a few people look at them, and this was like, this is what I want to teach to my students in spiritual formation class. It's what I want to teach and talk about to pastors who are struggling with burnout. I mean, it fits like such a wide audience that sometimes as writers, when we're asked by a publisher, okay, who's your target audience? We want to say everybody, and they want us to shrink it, or specific ones. Well, honestly, right now in my heart, because of my job and what I do, what I invest most of my time in, it is helping students be able to find a better balance in all of the chaos, the uneven surfaces of life. And so he liked that. He liked that idea. But he also knows that students do not spend much money, so he's thinking from a marketing side. But he said this. He said, Chris, just keep writing the way you're writing, and then we will turn it into what we need to turn it into. So it's great to have a publisher that believes in me and gives me the encouragement and the courage to continue the writing process. Well, the third phase of this, what's going to be the E? No. From the dream to the writing to
Editing.
the what?
Editing.
The editing. From dreaming to writing to editing. All right, so let's gossip about a few people here. None of them are here, so we can talk about them. I talk about Steve, the publisher. And so after I began writing and going further in this, part of my argument was everything needs to kind of be odd, feel odd. So this is my 11th book. Life is odd. Everything is out of balance. So we want the look, the feel, the pace to be odd. It's not going to be a book of poetry, but we will include poetry in it. It's going to be stories. It's going to be scripture. Everything's going to be odd. It's not going to fit the normal format of anything. So we like that. Again, the word balance is not an appealing word. I mean, if you hear the word balance, it's not like, oh, that just got my attention. Can I buy the book? So we played around with different ideas, and we proposed to Steve the title Equilibrium. He loved that. We played around with several different options for the subtitle, but originally it was going to be, as we were doing the writing and editing, there were going to be 35 chapters. 35 is an odd number, and it's a common number, but it's a little too common. So I thought, it's too many. There's a few of these I can shrink back. We were looking at word count. How long do we want the book to be? So then we moved that from 35 to 33. And as I was continuing the writing and editing process of my own, or before I sent it to my editors or his editor, it was like, we want there to be similarities through the book, but we don't want too many books to be just alike. So we eventually were able to take two of the chapters and merge them with two other chapters, so it ended up being 31. 31 chapters in each of those are the ways to stay balanced on life's uneven surfaces. The original subtitle was 31 steps or 31 something, but he turned it into 31 ways to stay balanced on life's uneven surfaces. I would always be saying in, but he was right. It needs to be on. So the editing process of writing is basically it's been interesting for me because now I've not only written 11 books, but I've been the editor and ghostwriter for over 40 books, helping other people write their books. And sometimes followers of Christ are the most difficult ones who will allow you to edit their material because God told me to say it this way. Well, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. God wants us to be the body of Christ and all help each other out. And it's, we laugh about it, but I can remember when I first started doing professional writing, and it was like the lines that I loved the most, that I wrote so well, that I thought were just the takeaway lines. Those were the very lines that editors decided to take out. But if you guys want to write, just remember that sometimes that can kind of trigger your energy or your desire to write. It's for you, it's not for the reader. It might motivate you to write, but it can get you going. It can kind of put you in motion and take you to places where you wouldn't go otherwise. If it's affected you, don't expect it to affect the reader. And so editors are there to sometimes put makeup on us to make us look better in our words, but sometimes to do plastic surgery on our words. And they have to bring changes that are needed. So here are the examples of what I've used over my last few books as people that know me and know my style. And I'm going to read to you their comments about their editorial work on my book. So Diane is a lady that was on staff at our church in Orlando. She worked for me for many years. She's a dear friend of mine and Debbie's. But Diane knows me very well. She knows, like, if I'm writing about something, what I really want to say, and maybe I feel it too much and I'm not writing it well enough. And so she would, all the years that I was pastoring, she would help edit our newsletters and any letter that I sent out. So again, she knows my language and she can help make it better. But she would just do kind of the first run, just taking my rough drafts and making them look better. But she would always, and I love this, because not all editors do this. I mean, some editors are just like, they're just going to growl and mean, and they're just going to just, but Diane has a gentle heart, and she will make suggestions or ask me questions. And that's kind of a good first round for me to be able to make changes. So Diane would make suggestions and changes, and then, of course, then the next one really would be Chris after Diane, because I would go through and make changes before I sent it to Jim. And James Rovira is, again, a friend of mine. He's known me for many years. He knows kind of what I need somebody to do, and he's the more academic, scholarly, everything better be just right, academically, but staying true to my beliefs and what I want the book to say. So, and he would be much more harsh. He would ask me many more questions. He would go deeper in his suggestions and corrections. And as writers, we need that. Again, let's not be people who are going to justify our poor decisions related to what we write. Let's receive help from the right people. So after Jim made his suggestions and comments and many questions, then I was able to make changes again. So after Jim, I wrote, and then Paul Smith is the one that I've been writing for many years. I wrote Sunday school curriculum for him for the Assemblies of God denomination. I wrote for him in the Life magazine, in Live, in God's Word for Today devotions. I wrote those devotions for the Assemblies of God denomination for like 15 years. It was a lot of work, but I loved it. And he got to know me well. He knows my style. He knows what I'm trying to say. And so Paul was kind of the final one to take it before we sent the final draft to the publisher. So just to give you a taste, since Jim Rovira can't be here and Paul can't be here, these are their comments. So this is what Jim Rovira, so just think of James Rovira. He's an English professor at a college, and he's bringing the scholarly academic side. So these are his comments. I've worked as an editor on many of Chris's books, and I would emphasize that Chris is highly collaborative in all stages of the writing process, from dreaming to final editing. He solicits opinions from a variety of perspectives, literally from beginning to end, including even his book covers. For the most part, he's been especially collaborative in terms of content, especially in his prose books. I'm quite the opposite. I tend to work with my own concepts beginning to end and then solicit feedback at a final content revision stage. Since most of my publishing is academic, I have to carefully protect my intellectual property until it is about to be released. My advice to Chris during the early stages of Equilibrium was for him to be less collaborative, to write the book as exclusively as possible in his own voice and from his own perspective. I felt that he needed this shift in emphasis for this specific project, and perhaps that his readers needed it as well, and I think the shift paid off. So one of the things that Jim challenged me, we had different sidebars. We have sidebars in the book anyway that quote other writers and other leaders, but I was going to have many more of them. And Jim wanted less of other voices and more of my voice. So that was one of the changes that we made from his suggestions. Okay, now Paul Smith. Paul wrote a lot, so I'm not going to include everything he said, although you will think it's a lot as I read it to you. But Paul, again, is a great editor. He says, every writer needs an editor. The purpose of having an editor is to make you look good. The key, however, is getting the right editor. As a writer, you have a voice, a unique style of writing that makes it uniquely you, without which your writing would be sterile, likely reading a newspaper report. This voice is not only how you use language, but it includes your worldview, your perspective. Knowing this, you need to find an editor who can discern your voice in your writing and maintain this. A good editor can adopt the writer's style and voice and can make corrections and suggestions accordingly. Chris's voice is very unique. He writes in a poetic prose and plays with words and uses alliteration and rhyming generously. So in editing his articles and his books, I've had to make major adjustments on how I edit his work. I often had to look up certain words he used to find his unusual use of those words. He uses words correctly, but often in unexpected ways. One nice thing about working with Chris is he welcomes suggestions. He doesn't always use them, but the fact that he welcomes them is an editor's dream. And he says, see note below. I'll mention that in a moment. He allows me to delete, change, offer alternative words. He even allows me to offer suggestions for a title for his first book of poetry, a line taken from one of his poems, which the publisher approved and is now in print. And now his note below is, an editor's nightmare is the writer who believes every word he writes is given by God. The problem with that is God doesn't spell that badly or use such bad grammar. I don't accept those assignments. And so you can tell Paul is somebody, he's serious in what he does. And so after Paul's changes, and then I went back and I had to do my part again, I went back and pretty much rewrote everything, and then took this final draft based on what Steve originally wanted, the publisher, and then I sent him that draft. And so that just kind of takes you through the writing and editing process. And then it goes to what? Dreaming, writing, editing, publishing. I just made a presentation a few weekends ago because once the book comes out, you've got a lot of things to do, and you need to be thinking of what's going to happen next. But I spoke a couple of weekends ago at a writers' conference about the publishing world today. And I don't know how many of you know how the publishing world has drastically changed over the last few decades. But some places think it's still changing too slowly. If you know much about the music world, the music industry, how albums and CDs and music was recorded years ago, now record it wherever you want to, however you can, raise the money yourself. And some of the most famous musicians back in my day are still great musicians, but if they can't guarantee sales, and if they don't do concerts with large audiences, they're not going to be able to record with well-known labels. And it's the same in the writing world today. So I made a presentation about a variety of methods to get published, to get your books published. In the major Christian book publishing world, you will need a literary agent who will work for you to convince a publishing company, not that your book is good, but that you have an audience. How many sales can you guarantee? It's all about numbers these days. I mean, they still want good books, but how much money will you as the writer invest in a marketing company to help promote your book? So that's the modern world of writing, and many people don't understand that. And that is how it is. That's why I'm so fortunate to have found a publisher who believes in me, that I don't have to go through an agent. I make more through him, and I don't have to send any money to an agent. Even though it's a small house, it's not well known, I like that because I'm a personal, relational kind of guy. And I would rather him look me in the face and say, Chris, this is not good, come up with something else, than just play the game of passing it to somebody else. And that has worked well for us in the publishing world. And going through the process on the publishing side, Steve, the publisher, talked about a variety of different dates that he wanted to publish it. Just a lot of things that he would think of that I am not going to think about. 5 cover designs. I'm not good with artwork. I'm not good on the marketing and promotion side, but I forwarded those to people who are good in that, and we just kind of made suggestions on, let's take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we ended up liking the cover that he decided on, and the subtitle. That was totally his selection. I wanted the 31 in there, but he made decisions on that before it was published. But then this ongoing conversation is, all right, what is the date? What is the date? And how can we begin promoting the book? The last one is marketing. How can we begin marketing the book before it's published? Some well-known publishing companies begin marketing books a year before they are published now. If you go through a literary agent and publish a book through a large publishing company, sometimes you will send them the book proposal 3 years before it's published. They will accept it maybe 2 years or a year and a half before it's published. Well, it's moving further away from that in some of the smaller circles because so many things are done digitally, and it doesn't take as long. In fact, there were some mistakes that we found on the first few. He did some early print versions of the book for the conferences I was going to go to, and we found some mistakes in it, so those have already been corrected in the ebooks and for the next printed book versions. But the publishing is like, I do not like that part of the process. I love the writing and the speaking part, but I'm not good at making those decisions. So I have to, this is an important word, I have to trust those who are good in those areas. I'll just pick 2 or 3 things. Let's make sure we do this, this, and this. And so the debate was when? One of the first goals was to, when I first started writing this, the goal was to have it published before the IPHC General Conference this summer. So that was the original goal. We were able to get through these early drafts like 2 months earlier than we thought we would. And I'm like, well, Steve, we don't have to hurry. We just begin marketing. He said, no, then we needed this, this, and this. And then he read the story in the book about April 1. You guys need to read that story in the book. It's an April Fool's joke, but this is not a joke. You really do need to read it. But he said, what if we do it then? It's kind of be a behind-the-scenes joke. And so he decided that we would publish it on April 1st, and for a variety of reasons, play around with that phrase, but there were 2 huge conferences that I would be attending the first 2 weekends of April. I would be at a writers' conference in West Virginia, and then last weekend I was at the Evangelical Press Association convention that I wish we could get more involved in that here at Emmanuel. I mean, I love that. There I was in Colorado Springs last weekend, and they're honoring college students for their writing. That was just so exciting to me because I'm biased. I love college students and I love writing. And so that was just a big smile, and several of them were honored with scholarships so they could come to future conventions like that. So it was just fun. But those were 2 big events where I was going to be speaking, I was going to be meeting a lot of people that would be interviewing me, and Steve said we have to get the books out by then. So he's thinking from a what? A marketing side, and that has always been difficult for me. I spoke last year, Ashley knows about this, we had to do a video because the Evangelical Press Association was not live and in person, but the session that I talked about was M&Ms. I mean, don't you like M&Ms? Like peanut M&Ms especially. But our M&Ms were marketing or ministry. Which is it? Well, for me, the way I'm wired, it's just like ministry. I'm going to write a book. How is it going to impact somebody's life? How can it bring you peace and comfort and calmness and all of the chaos of life? My first 2 chapters, believe in the big. I mean, that's ministry for me. Daring you to believe in big things, have hope for the future. Well, equilibrium, 2nd chapter, be faithful in the little. That's what I help students do. That's where my heart is. That's ministry to me. My publisher's argument is, Chris, it's the same thing. You don't have to see it as something different. I'm just marketing your product so more people can be aware of your ministry. You can view it as ministry all you want to, but I have to make money for myself and my company and for you because you need money. You work at Emmanuel College, you need money. And it's the healthy M&Ms. So I love to talk about that and then act like I'm going to hand out M&Ms and I just pass them to people, then I take a bite and don't give it to them. But
well, that's ministry.
that's good. I'll bring you some in class, okay? So, what next? Okay, so what Steve decided to do this year was very different. His publishing company has not been walking, holding hands with Amazon all the time in the past because he makes less money, I make less money through everything that's done through Amazon, but this time he decided to do it differently. The first 4 days of April 1, 2, 3, and 4, the ebook version of Equilibrium was free on Amazon. And so Steve just wanted to do it as a marketing technique so more people might be prone to do it. So he sent out letters, some of you received the letters, and this is what Steve said, the publisher, and he wanted me to mention this because of how it worked well on the marketing side. So here are the numbers here. So 0, that's how much money we got from the sales because it was 0. And then Steve says on launch week, that's what he called it, launch week, Chris Maxwell's Equilibrium went to number one on Kindle in the Christian Professional Growth category, and number 2 in the Personal Growth and Christianity category. It ranked 29th 1,205 on Kindle overall. And so that was very encouraging. And again, I'm not a numbers kind of guy, but he said, considering there are more than 10 million books on Kindle, being 1,205 is great. So he was pleased with the outcome. And this is what he really got excited about, because as people were buying the Kindle version for how much? Zero. It was also selling the printed version. So, and those that I've purchased through him, for me to be selling, I only have like 4 left from the early. So this is like the best of any of my other books have ever sold. So I think his strategy worked. So it just helps you see that, start with the dreaming and then the hard work of writing, and the editing process and publishing. Many times so many of the writers that I talk to at the writers' conference, they think this is the end of the story. But a lot of the hard work needs to continue now, because I'll be writing blogs, quoting the book, we're going to be having conversations, we're doing videos. And one of the exciting things is that now I've been asked to work on a study guide for it. I was on TV yesterday. I'll be on a huge podcast for the Assemblies of God denomination later today. I don't know when they're going to broadcast that. Be on TV tomorrow night. And it's just like, it's kind of the momentum is happening, and this is the reason, because we all are living in such uneven surfaces. We're living in this what now, what next world, and these are 31 principles that I believe deep in my heart can help us find peace amid the chaos. So next year, Emmanuel College, the theme for the year is equilibrium. And we were just in a meeting talking about some of the ways that can help students find peace. Because think about how you have felt as students and how we feel. I mean, it's staff and faculty, where everything seems so out of balance in life. The hard work, the schedules, the assignments you have. We want God to bring peace to us. Well, we believe that He already has, so what do we do about it? Well, these are 31 practical ways that we can experience and live in His peace. Got chapters in here about forgiving people. It's a choice. A chapter in here about not trusting your feelings. We too often depend on our emotions and assume that our emotions are telling us reality when they are not. They're over-responding and over-protecting. We should be aware of them, but not controlled by them. The chapters that follow that, though, teach us how to deal better with emotions. To cry, to laugh, to talk to people, to have counseling. So we want the ongoing plans of marketing to be, again, my desire, which is ministry, to bring hope and help for other people. So as we're looking at this, one of the ways that you guys can help pass the word around and play your role in this M&M, this ministry, this marketing, is tell other people about it. If you don't have the ebook, it's not free anymore, but it's still just 99 cents, okay? Ebook version on Amazon, 99 cents, get it. Several people who want the printed version went ahead and bought that just to help bring momentum, because sales bring sales. They've been watching the Amazon emphasis and the attention that I'm getting on Amazon, and the more attention you get, the more attention you will get. It's strange. And again, I'm still in kindergarten on the marketing side. I'm still a kid at that, and I kind of want to stay a kid, but I want to learn and be told what to do and try to do that the right way. I'm going to read just one little part here, and then we've got some time for questions. This is the poem that I wrote that was originally in the book of poetry, and it's called Uneven Surfaces. The sign predicted the status waiting for us. Straight lines and simple turns aren't ahead. The ground isn't even, like life. The surface, our place of dependence, isn't even. Meaning what? A serious concern or a disruption of our preferences. Actually, expectations can go unmet. Often, security doesn't seem secure. I don't expect casualties, just adjustments, leaning slightly when needed, with curves and angles staring, not moving, as they force our moves along the surface. So again, that was the original journal entry. Well, not the original, but that was edited and final draft of the journal entry that came, written on an airplane, after walking in and seeing that sign of uneven surfaces, that turned into a book of poetry, and that kind of fit the mood and tone of what we wanted Equilibrium to say and to reveal for all of us. how do we want this to help others? The word is peace amid the chaos. We can't control the circumstances around us, and we can lean and just to feel like we're about to fall many times, but there can be internal peace amid the chaos. And so that's what we want the book to do. So that's kind of a story. Any parts of that story would you like to ask questions? We're saving time for some questions before we end. Questions about the process?
Did you try to get a literary agent at one point before
Yes,
you met Steve?
I
How did that go?
did have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I had an agent. I met her through another friend that I had done some editing and ghostwriting for. And it was a very good relationship because she was going to represent me, but most of the people that she was going after were just kind of big number, pastors of huge churches, on TV kind of people. But in the agreement that I signed with her, if I found a publisher of my own, then I could go directly with them instead of through her. So that's not always the case.
Well, how did you find her? How did you get in contact with her specifically? And why did
Recommended by another writer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and she liked my work. Most of her work was fiction,
Okay.
but she loved my stories, and she loved the way I put stories together and the flow and the pace.
Okay.
We stayed in touch. It was a good, healthy relationship. The way I found Steve, do you know that part of the story?
I don't think so.
I had a friend that had published through another company, and I was his editor. And so he was wanting to publish his next book through Steve, but he said, if I publish through you, I want Chris Maxwell to be the one who helps me just craft it all. I'm not the final edit, but I help him think and process and make the original editorial work. And so he lives in North Carolina. Steve lives in South Carolina. I live in Georgia, so we met for a meal in South Carolina. And I just helped them put the process together of this guy's next book and what I thought would work. They wanted my opinions, and I offered those. Then at the end, Steve looked at me. I'd never met him before. He said, well, what about you, Chris? Tell me about your writing. So I told him about my latest book, and he said, you have any proposals now? I said, yeah. I said, I can send them directly to you if you're interested. He said, yeah, I'd like to see them. And of course, by the end of the week, he had emailed me and asked to see the proposal. He had already been online. He had already read my books. And he said, I like your writing. This is what I like. What do you want to do next? And so I told him. And that's what turned into the book Pause. That eventually turned into a series of 4 books into that Pause. So it's interesting how that happened. It was like God in the middle of all of I was just trying to help somebody else, but God was helping me as I was helping somebody else. And in that equilibrium is how God balances it all out. A good question.
Pastor Chris, we know you're a busy person. You do a lot of different things. What are some of your writing rhythms that help you to accomplish having written 11 books?
Yeah, early morning. And Debbie knows that there are many weekends that if I don't have special events, that I would be over here I would come over on a Saturday and write for a long time. And then I lay down pretty early at night if I can, and I'll read through a draft one more time and just make things that I'll want to change the next morning. I kind of end with it and start with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are many times I go home for lunch and I'll do 45 minutes of writing, just eating alone.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the balance. Because I love being with people, but I'm better with people if I'm alone, and I'm better alone if I'm writing. Because it's my psalmistic therapy. Yeah. So, good question. Thank you.
I was going to say, if you don't mind me interjecting this part of the story, Steve had to think out of the box to put that on Amazon for free because there was an ink and paper shortage and could not publish your book. So he was trying to think out of the box how to get it out there because he wasn't able to put anything on paper because of the ink and paper shortage.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we got that panic call at the 1st of March, and you were trying to get it out April 1st, and so, yeah, they were sitting on a boat somewhere out in the...
Well, your publisher says, Chris, just want you to know, it's all going to be okay. When they start with that, it doesn't feel okay at all. He's trying to calm me down before he knew I was about to not be
But it
calmed
pushed
down.
him to think in another way, and and it all worked out well, so.
Yeah. And I appreciate, Emmanuel is jumping on for next year, and just the plans. Over the past few years, I've gotten a lot of promotion from other institutions and other denominations, but it's nice to have the team that you're a part of jumping on board and let's kind of all do this together. And there's some ideas for future books that we would love to have some conversations with students and other EC people about that can be future themes of what we're doing now. And it's interesting, the conversations that I had yesterday with the radio show in Atlanta are totally different than the conversations I'm going to have on the podcast today. The one today is with the Assemblies of God, the Ministers Magazine, and it's going to be, how can this help our pastors in these days of chaos, in these days of burnout, and so many are resigning? What can you bring? How can they find equilibrium? And he has sent these deep questions already to me. Yesterday the radio show was, "Hey Chris, how you doing?" It was just a 10-minute, 15-minute short clip, and this is going to be a longer podcast. And I like that. I like all the different audiences I get a chance to talk to, because my argument is everybody needs to find balance amid the chaos. Balance your schedules better. Balance your emotions better. Conversations better. In 2 of the chapters, one is just like, it's about being committed and dedicated to where we are. But the chapter after that, to balance it out, knowing when to leave the right way at the right time. So it's all about balance and equilibrium. Got time for maybe another question or two?
Do you have like a favorite chapter, or chapters like children and you love them all the same?
Well, I asked my editors that question. Which chapter did you like the most? And most of them have selected Kiki, my cow, because I wrote about Kiki the cow. But was I really writing about Kiki? No, it was just a sneaky way. I wrote about the cow Kiki, but I was really writing about my friend Bill, that I hang out with and go out with the cows, because he was my best friend in high school, and he didn't want anything written about him. He's one of those guys that does anything for anybody. So I'm writing about Kiki, but Kiki's not really in the book. But I'm really writing about Bill, my friend that I hang out with, that owns the cows. It has introduced me to the cows. So that's one of the most popular ones. This is interesting. I think every one of the editors loved the chapter that I wrote about when I went to, when I was in San Antonio, Texas. And I wrote the story about, here is Chris Maxwell. I've had a little bit of time to go and see all of the sites there in San Antonio, because I was speaking at an epilepsy convention that night. And so I had that morning and early afternoon to do this. But I just had this sense the Holy Spirit was guiding me to do something I did not want to do. It's the chapter about don't trust your feelings. I didn't feel like going to this place. I didn't have an emotional high. I just had this sense from God that I needed to walk into a Catholic church. They were doing confessions, and I went and I prayed. I sure didn't want to go and do a confession. I didn't have any feelings about going and doing that, but I needed to. So instead of following my feelings, I just did what I knew I needed to do, and I went and did a confession. And I'm telling you guys, I'm not exaggerating, it was one of the best spiritual experiences of my life. So I wrote about that. People loved that. I mean, I got our president's permission, our denominational leader's permission. Is it okay if I write a chapter about confession? They said, yeah, it'd be great. But then you have to read the chapter, because what happened the next morning takes me to that place of what I needed. I didn't know that I needed that. If I had trusted my feelings, it'd be, oh, I don't have time for that. I just feel like going. No. Life is more than how you feel. It's doing what we need to do. That's the equilibrium we need to find. I wrote about more people who had recently passed away than I thought I was going to write about. I wrote a chapter about going to spend time with my dad the Thursday night. Debbie and I had just had breakfast at Bar H, and she was leaving to go check on her mom. I was leaving to go home. I was tired. But I had this sense that I needed to go check on Pops. I didn't know that would be the last time I would see him. So I hung out with Pops. It was the best conversation that he and I had in years, the deepest conversation. He walked me to the car as I was leaving, and I noticed, look, he looks old. I mean, he was already 90, but he looked it. And he walked slowly back, and then he just turned and just stared at me as I drove away. I didn't know that I'd receive a call that Saturday morning that nobody could get a hold of him, and I had to go over to his house, and we had to go in, and I found his body, that he had passed away. Those are the kind of stories that I wrote about. I wrote about other dear friends that had passed away. I was surprised that there were so many death stories. But if we want to find equilibrium in life, we got to take the bad, the painful, because that's how life is. And God gives us peace in the middle of that. Okay? One more quick question. I'm good if you all are good. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, let's give Chris Maxwell